Nosferatu screening at Harmony Gold, Sunset Boulevard. Nosferatu remake.
Production designer Craig Macklin. Costume designer Linda Muir. Supervising sound editor Damien Volpe. And re-recording mixer David Gianmarco. Alright, Robert, I'm going to make you tell the story again that I know you've already had to tell a lot. I apologize for that. But
I mean, I can just launch into it then.
you could, yes.
So I saw Nosferatu, the Murnau film, for the first time when I was 9 years old, and it had a massive effect on me. It was on a VHS that was made from a degraded 16mm print, so it kind of seemed more real. You couldn't see the bald cap on Max Schreck or the grease paint. He just seemed like a real vampire, and the whole haunting atmosphere felt very authentic, and it was as if it was unearthed from the past. And also, the Murnau film takes the Stoker novel and turns it into a very simple, enigmatic fairy tale, which is something that has stayed with me through making this thing that you have all just watched. And then when I was 17 years old, me and my good friend co-directed a play in high school of Nosferatu. And then the artistic director of the local theater who saw that high school production invited us to do a more professional version of it in his theater, and it changed my life. It cemented the fact that I wanted to be a director. And ever since then, Nosferatu has been a major part of my identity as someone who makes creative work, attempts to make creative work. So that's that.
What do you think, now looking back, is the reason that vampire lore, Nosferatu, specifically connected with you?
I mean, I was into vampires even before then. I was Dracula, the Halloween. Before that, I had seen the Bela Lugosi movie several times. I can only imagine that as a child, the power and of this combination of sex and death, two things that I didn't understand and would be like unconsciously appealing, was appealing. And now they're consciously appealing.
For Chris and for Eleanor, can you talk about your journey to producing this film? I know that Rob has told me that there were some stops and starts, and then there was a meeting with Focus, and they were all in. So can you tell the story of how you came to this?
I think we started, an independent production company called Maiden Voyage over 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago, and our third film was actually, we helped with some finishing funds with The Witch, and that's how we were introduced to Rob.
Yeah, and when Rob and I first met, we sort of bonded over our love of Hammer films and everything horror, really. And Rob started talking about Nosferatu immediately. I mean, it's been 10 years. It's been almost 10 years since we've been involved with it. And the goal was really to help, for Maiden Voyage particularly, was to help first-time filmmakers realize their vision and realize their vision without an extraordinary amount of studio interference. And in a sense, we waited 10 years to find the perfect partners with Focus, because Focus supported Rob's vision and sort of everything he wanted to do with this film.
Absolutely.
And that's rare for a studio. So we found incredible partners with Focus, which made our job easier. And it was a producing situation where we had to move to, for me, films I produced over the last 30-some years, I'd be there for a couple of weeks, and I'd say, okay, the director's good, I'll direct something. But with Rob, it was like, he said, well, no, I want you to move to Prague, and I want you guys to be on set every day. And I was like, whoa, that's a commitment. But it was worth it for this film. I fell in love with his vision, and I also fell in love with the idea of learning from someone else. You know, I think the problem with a lot of directors, really, who are getting up there in age, or at least starting to get up there in age, is that you sort of get set in your ways, and you're not inspired again. And I found Rob, and particularly his crew, just an inspirational sort of motivation to continue doing what I've been doing over the last 30 years. And it was great. I think we were both extraordinarily surprised and inspired by the whole.
It was absolutely phenomenal, and the whole crew and Rob's meticulous detail is just outstanding. But you also don't have a director very often who's this passionate about the material since 8, so we got incredibly lucky.
That's true.
Was there a moment where you realized this is going to be huge, and you just were like, "Oh my God, this is on a whole other level"?
Oh no, that never happens. I mean, I'm not trying to be glib or anything. You never really know. You don't know if it's going to be huge. We knew it was going to be good. We knew that there was a specific vision, and we knew that it was going to be a beautiful film. But we still don't know if it's going to be huge, by the way. I hope so. But there is that knowing when you're seeing the dailies, knowing when you're on set, knowing, again, the attention to detail that every one of these people has put into this film, that it's a passion project for everybody up on the stage, and you know you're involved in something special.
Jaron, as cinematographer, you have worked so closely with Rob for so long on every one of his features, some shorts. You guys are a kind of a duo that work incredibly closely. And Rob had told me before about the method you use to work through planning your shots, and you both were in the Czech Republic for a very long time together, and everything you do is so meticulous. And I was really curious if you could explain, as an example, how you planned the scene where Nicholas is going up in the snow to the castle and the carriage comes, because that to me it's just a work of art. It's so beautiful. Could you talk us through planning that shot and the elements of it?
I mean, that scene, I think I'm very happy with the way the lighting turned out, but yeah, I mean, shot design-wise, it's pretty straightforward. It's shot reverse shot until the carriage arrives, and then we kind of go into this disorienting, wacky section where we're sort of like spinning through transitions of black. But you know, ideas like that you're not going to come up with that idea on set. You know, so you need months to sort of find the best version of that. And you know, Chris was involved in that section as well. We had, you know, part of that, we had a different angle on the castle, and Chris is like, really, you're not going to show the castle? You know, so then we redesigned that, which meant that the shots next, you know, adjacent to that needed to be reversed as far as the direction of the tilt and so forth. But yeah, I mean, we arrived in Czech Republic with the school year with our kids, and the production office wasn't open yet. So my daughter would go on the bus, and then I walk across the neighborhood to Rob's place, and we just like make some tea, makes us coffee, and we just, you know, set out to thumbnail the whole movie, you know. So we did that from basically September 1st until shooting. You know, there's 169 scenes, and you know, hopefully you get, you know, a couple drafts in of each, but like we barely made it. In fact, there's like one scene that wasn't storyboarded, but you know, we try to storyboard every last thing and make sure it's the best idea, you know. So yeah, I think we were just winging it. You wouldn't have the design that we were able to have, you know. So and I think every movie I do, we get a little bit, we set precedents, we get a little better and better deal, you know. Like I was on it very early this time, so we were able to, you know, to do this.
Perhaps you can speak to this too, Rob. I had spoken to all the cast, and they all said that the way you two work together brings out something in them, because no other duo of director and DP work quite the same way, with such specific planning and attention to detail. And so Willem Dafoe had told me, you know, this made me better, because it's challenging in a very specific way. Can you maybe speak to that?
I think that, yeah, I mean, that the actors have been saying is that basically because the blocking is so specific, and you can't overthink things with your performance, and so you like part of your mind is achieving this technical stuff about hitting your mark very specifically. We never use a Steadicam. It's all crane and dolly, which makes it even a little more specific. And so in the moment they're just kind of there. But one of the things, we shoot this way so that we bring the audience into the film more. It's hopefully the intent is to suck you in because you're just traveling through the scene without cuts. But the other benefit is like Aaron Taylor Johnson is dependent on Emma Corrin, who's dependent on Lily Rose Depp, who's dependent on Willem Dafoe, and it's a dance with the camera, and they're also dependent, and also with the camera operator and the focus puller and the dolly pusher and the carpenters who have to take the wall out and move it to get the camera through in the middle of the shot, put the wall back as we come back around. So everybody on set when we're doing these long oneers is involved and it feels like they are like part of the collaborative process of making the movie right there and then, which is great, and it adds an extra amount of focus as well. So that's another benefit of working this way.
Craig, I'd love to hear just how on earth you put this together, because it's extraordinary. Everything was built. I know from talking to Rob an earlier occasion that even the details of headstones being brought into an existing cemetery. There was the castle gate was reworked, and all the sets were built, and the details are incredible. Can you maybe speak to I suppose, let's say the biggest challenge, if you could single one out?
There were a few. One of the great things is with Rob and the rest of my friends, we've been working together for a while, and so we get to know each other, and also Rob shared the script with me, we discussed it together today. I've had seen several versions of the script, so I had a run up in terms of what we were going to do, and so there was a lot of planning that was involved. But what was the biggest challenge? There were several challenges. Probably the biggest single challenge would have been the streets, just because of the scale. Not just the scale, but also trying to get that scale and also have all the details just right. Talking carpenters into not building anything square or plumb, making sure that it was just a little bit off so that it reads right. That was probably the biggest single challenge, but there were plenty of others.
They were hand drawing each brick, I remember that.
Yeah, we ended up carving the bricks instead of molding them and doing the way we often do it. Which worked. I was a little bit nervous doing it at first, but it worked really well because we had such long expanses of brick. And anybody that's done long expanses of brick realizes that we spent a long time trying to get the joints to work, and this way we didn't have that problem. And it was also very detailed. A lot of the brick was very detailed. So this gave us the freedom to do everything we needed.
Craig and his team's finishes are just so wild. Like when the great hall of the castle, even without Jaren's lighting, just with fluorescent lights from the stage, it looked like you were in a castle. And it's I don't know how many TV shows and films I've seen with great castles that I still know are sets, and this one, just you have no idea.
Craig, I also would love to hear about how you collaborate with Rob and Jaren, because there's so much that has to happen in terms of the lighting being in the right place, windows being in the right place, and that might mean that you have to suddenly pivot and change your design in accordance with. It's a close collaboration, right?
It's a very close collaboration. I mean, we, once again, the benefit of working together a lot of, I hear a lot about the shots that we were to do, that we're thinking about as I'm designing it as well. And then there's designs that often will change. So yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, but it's very organic. It's fun. It's fun to describe how we work, because it just feels like we hang out and we discuss what we want it to look like. And
Yeah, I asked for a plan, what do you think about for this scene? Like we're designing it, but you need a baseline of what the room would be, so I asked for that, and then it's like, oh, you know what, if this was over here,
yeah,
is that
the
still...
spiral staircase went to the
How
other
many times
direction.
do you do that goddamn staircase? Is that 4 or 5,
6 or 8 or 12.
Okay, sure.
But the thing is like I've been obsessed with this since I was a kid. Great, and we've been working on this for 10 years. Awesome. But the wonderful thing is, the more that we work together, like all the heads of department, we become further extensions of ourselves, and we become more fluid in our collaboration, and we're able to push each other further beyond what we each individually could imagine. And as much as it's easy to beat the drum of my vision because I've been attached to this for so long. Over the 10 years, it's become the articulation of a collective vision. And that and something that again could never have happened without all of us pushing each other outside of our comfort zones and pushing each other beyond what we thought we were capable of.
That brings me to you, Linda, because I'd love to hear all about your costume design. And again, you're a long-time collaborator with this team. Can you talk about specifically, on the one hand, there's obviously a very specific era, and you've got to take your environment into consideration. But could you talk specifically about Orlok's look? Because that's fascinating to me, how you built that, because I know that the Romanian folklore was very important to Rob, and also kind of throwing out old cinematic tropes that we've seen for so long. The idea was to toss those out and do something that went back to the original folklore.
Well, I think that certainly having a few starts before we actually then got into the real prep and then went through the production helped, because I didn't feel an extraordinary pressure to design such an iconic character. And Robert knew right, from the very first time that we discussed things, that his Orlok would be based on reality. He always provides incredible lookbooks that he does his own really detailed research. And so both Craig and I start with a wealth of information, and then it becomes a task of adding to that. And where a portrait that we are attached to might show, the mente, the very large overcoat, the very long sleeves that you see on Orlok. It might give us the silhouette, and it might give us the front view, but then, what does the back look like? What does the garment underneath that look like? So I have to start then looking into what museums have, photographs from museums of extant pieces, and all of that goes to Robert, and we discuss, what about this, what about that, look at these fabrics, look at these buttons, and then eventually, once the sketches are done and he's approved them, then I start looking for fabrics to accomplish the wealth that Orlok is meant to have. He's meant to be a nobleman from a very specific period, and he represents, his character is, I think, about 250 years, 300 years, prior to the time period that 1838, where our other characters are set. So you have that contrast as well. And then I suppose the final, after all of the mock-ups and all of the fittings, and looking at it on stand, and looking at it on Bill, and getting Bill's input, How does that make you feel? How, once we started to actually build the costume pieces, we realized that this fabulous, glorious overcoat was really heavy, and it didn't magically stay on his shoulders as it needed to. So we had to devise a very intricate harness for underneath it. So all along the way, I'm working with Robert and with the actors to accomplish the look, but also the very practical part of it. And we have to make these pieces. We have to make many of them. We have 3 overcoats. We have 3 full. For Orlok, we have 3 complete outfits for actor, stunt, and photo doubles. So we work through all of that. And then we get to the part that is the most fun, which is the decay and the corpseification of all of that. And our team at Rob was really phenomenal. In the costume workshop, we had such talented people.
A journalist today said, "Oh, I see Edward Gorey and I see like Russian czars," and I said, "Well, you see that, but we weren't influenced by anything but the research that is exactly what a Transylvanian nobleman from that period would wear." That's how we all work. It's just from the research that says like this is what a Bukovina monastery looks like in this way, and this is how the nuns were dressed in the period. And again, we have to go to the museum finds of extant garments to figure that out. It's all historical accuracy doesn't make anything better, but it is our collective approach, and it gives we're all on the same page because we know that that's the aim. It's also impossible to achieve, but it is a great unifier because we all know what we're after.
Damien, I remember when you were working on The Lighthouse, you talking about how you did a lot of kind of analog sound and field recording for that kind of authenticity, and I was really curious as to how much of that was involved in Nosferatu, and that kind of, I guess, real kind of recorded sound that you'd created.
Yeah, we were just talking the other day, Rob and I, with someone, and I remembered that our first collaboration, which was Robert's first short, Telltale Heart, we had relatively no crew and no time, and so I said I need some Foley work, and Rob went out with a friend, I don't know who that was, and did it himself. And I thought, okay, this is a director I really want to work with. He went up to a field and was like stabbing at things with sticks and making muddy footsteps. And so it's a through line, and I think we share that, that those kind of organic sounds keep things grounded in the same way that the historical accuracy does. It allows you to spring off into the fairy tale, into the Gothic, into the occult, into this spectral, if you're then grounded by the real. And so with this film, we shoot to that. There's nothing electronic, for sure, in the score or the soundtrack. The winds are primarily made from, the spooky winds, let's call them, are made from either Bill's ADR breaths, so we had Bill Skarsgård do long breaths during an ADR session that quickly tired him. I've given you a lot of breaths. He said, yes, but I need a longer one. And then we kind of stretch those out to make most of the tonal stuff for his castle. And in addition, I just love that so much that Rob had made this, theatrical version in high school, so we shared that kind of New England love of the Gothic, and so on The Lighthouse, I had wanted to make thunder in a theatrical way, with a thunder sheet, and we actually never got to do that. But on this one, I decided to build a wind machine so that we could bring that in, and I had recorded it in a kind of a giant reverberant staircase and snuck it into some scenes in the castle. thinking that it would be like a little nod to this that no one would notice. And then on the last day of the mix, Rob decided to put one of those wins at the very first sound of the film, which made me very happy, and also, I think made that kind of a more special thing. So there's a lot of that. We did great work with a fabulous Foley team at Skywalker, led by Heikki Kossi, who's a Finnish Foley artist that I contacted when he was still in Finland before he moved to Skywalker, thus blowing up my Foley budget extraordinarily. But a superb artist who gave us all sorts of things, including like 20 versions of the shoes that you never see, or that's metal shod leather Romanian nobleman slippers.
You see him on a staircase for a few frames.
But this is kind of exciting stuff where I was like, oh, it'll be like the Castle of Otranto. We can hear the monster before we see him, and there'll be this clanging of his feet. And so those ideas, even if they don't manifest the way that I originally envisioned them, they do sneak their way in there. And if I misstep, Robert is, he's extraordinarily focused on every detail and wonderful. I mean, he does push you to do your best work. And so I think with the Lighthouse, we did also like 20 versions of the lobster trap. But in this one, the things that we struggled with were the stone footsteps. So in the end, the Foley steps weren't really cutting it. We had a guy go into the streets of London at 3 a.m. and I also did some footstep recordings in an abandoned monastery, 14th century, I think 15th century, 14th century monastery in Ireland that was just like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It was empty, and I got there on the morning with my wife and her uncle who lives there, and recorded the hell out of it. And it had all these cool interior spaces with different kinds of reverberations, some of them very tight. We did some of the crypt footsteps there. I dragged some granite around, which ended up being part of Orlok's voice, kind of in a way. And so we definitely try to, I like to get my hands dirty. I sit in front of the computer a lot, so I have to get out into the world, and I guess I feel like shooting
That is some serious dedication. David, as re-recording makes it, I believe you worked on that over some 70 films. Can you talk about what specifically was special to working on this film with this team, and how you collaborate with Damien and talk with Rob about achieving the right sound?
This is my first time working with Rob and Damien. It was Rob and Carolyn, the composer, was also with us on the mixing stage for pretty much the whole dub. So it was really great our work together was to have music blend with sound design. And being able to work with Rob and Damien, and we could really sort of use the whole room and make it a kind of immersive soundtrack, and sort of let the music play with the sound design, so sometimes you don't know the difference. And then working with Orlok's voice and spatializing that, because he is so big, just using like the actual reverbs of the place he might be in, and then using some spread on his voice to make him bigger and larger than life in many ways. But presenting that to Rob and seeing if he liked it, and presenting musical ideas to Rob and Robin, and seeing how it all played, it was very rewarding, and it's a creative process I've ever done.
David is both brave, but also conservative in the right way. I think that one of the benefits of working with him with this mix is that there are a lot of we knew there needed to be a lot of dynamics, and there needed to be a lot of quiet moments where you lean in to kind of get in there, which is great. But I think this kind of movie could be too big, too in your face, too loud. And when it is loud, but it's not loud for too long. and I think that you know it, like that kind of sensitivity you know comes a lot from working with you.
Well, we are running out of time here, but Rob, I'd love it if you would just wrap it up for us by answering this sort of slightly left field question. I can't stop thinking about what it must be like to dream of doing something almost your whole life, and then you've done it. And how does it feel? Do you feel that you can actually enjoy that feeling, oh, I've done that now? Or is it just, you know, most humans just go, oh, what's next? But it's been almost your whole life.
I mean, it's nice to have made a movie you don't hate. That's a good feeling, and that makes you vulnerable. You know, it makes you vulnerable. So, but I am glad to have it out there, and I am proud of everyone's work and the actors' incredible performances as well. You know, that are bolstered by you know this whole team's work. So, you know, I don't know.
Well, I just want to say congratulations to all of you in making this beautiful piece of art. It's just stunning and it delivers on every level. And thank you so much for being here to talk about it.
Just gotta have the Nosferatu screening. It was pretty good. Great atmosphere, great visuals, great remake. It is technically a Christmas movie. The vampire is a Vlad Tepes looking monster that's actually scary. He's a supernatural force of nature, a plague, just like in the 1922 film. This is definitely Edgar's best movie and one of the best movies of the year.